Suddenly, Han Zhaoying uttered a shriek of surprise. She saw, in front of the running shadow, another smaller silhouette that was also climbing the hill. This silhouette moved more slowly, and, because it was small, no one had seen it before. She watched more attentively and saw that it was a child, Go Jing certainly. Surprised and delighted, she hastened to meet him. She was not very far from him and the downward slope was easy to descend, but Copper Corpse, a remarkable expert in lightness kung fu, was gaining on him quickly. Han Zhaoying hesitated. I am not skilled enough to face Copper Corpse, but the child is going to fall into his hands, how can I not help? She accelerated and shouted, quickly, child, run faster. Seeing her, Go Jing uttered a yell of joy, unconscious of the imminent danger that threatened him. For years, Zhang Asheng had been secretly in love with Han Zhaoying, but never dared express his feelings towards her. Seeing her running into terrifying danger, he feared for her safety and sprang forward to catch up and protect her. On top of the hill, the other freaks had stopped attacking Mai and observed the slope of the hill, keeping their invisible projectiles concealed, ready to intervene. In the blink of an eye, Han Zhaoying reached Go Jing. She took his small hand and turned on her heels to run back with him. They had hardly started, when she felt Go Jing's hand slip from her grip. The child uttered a loud scream. Chen Xuanfeng had grabbed him from behind. Han Zhaoying turned around with an agile move and, using the sword stroke the phoenix nods its head, finted towards the enemy's left armpit. Then, moving to the side, raised the tip of the sword for a quick and precise thrust, aimed at his eyes. It was the very essence of the sophisticated technique of the sword of the Yue maiden. Chen Xuanfeng took the child under his left arm, parried the stroke with his right, deflecting the blade. He followed with the palm stroke to push the skiff while following the current. The young woman retracted her weapon and moved away. But the arm of Chen Xuanfeng suddenly seemed to lengthen by half a foot. Han Zhaoying, who originally had the impression that she was outside of his range, was reached and struck on the shoulder. She fell to the ground. This exchange took place in a flash. The merciless Copper Corpse followed with a stroke of his claws directly at the top of Han Zhaoying's head. The 9-yin white bone claws was a dangerous and cruel technique which destroyed flesh and broke bones. The stroke could not fail to penetrate the skull of the young woman. Zhang Asheng was some steps away and understood the danger. Without thinking about his own safety, he threw himself on top of her, protecting her with his body. The claw fell, and the 5 fingers of Copper Corpse penetrated the smiling Duda's back. Zhang Asheng let out a terrifying howl and tried to reach his enemy's chest with his large knife. Chen Xuanfeng defended against it, causing the weapon to drop. Copper Corpse returned with another palm against Zhang as he lay on the ground. Frightened, the other freaks shouted as they hurried to their rescue. "My shrew!" shouted Chen Xuanfeng, "what happened here? They destroyed my eyes." Mai Chaofeng replied with anger while leaning against a tree. "If you let one of them escape, my bastard husband, you will deal with me." "No worries, my shrew," Chen Xuanfeng shouted, "not one will escape alive. You hurt? Don't move." Copper Corpse slammed down his hand again at the head of Han Zhaoying. Han used the move "a lazy dunce makes a somersault," and she escaped rolling. "Do you believe you will be able to escape me?" mocked Chen, raising his left hand. Zhang Asheng, severely wounded and confused, saw that his beloved was in danger of being killed. Mobilizing every last bit of strength, he sent a kick toward the enemy's hand. Chen planted his fingers in Zhang's leg. Zhang, goaded by the pain, straightened up and wrapped his arms around his aggressor. Chen caught him by the neck, wanting to throw him far away, but the smiling Duda, fearing still that he would hurt Han Zhaoying, stubbornly refused to release him. Copper Corpse gave him a violent blow to the head that stunned him. The butcher fainted, and his grip relaxed. The intervention of Zhang had given the young woman enough time for her to jump to her feet and take the fight to Chen. She didn't dare approach him closely and was content to whirl around the enemy using her lightness technique. "Fifth brother," she shouted, "how do you feel?" She had made 2 whirls around Chen when the others arrived and joined in. Zhu Chong and Quan Jinfa immediately threw their invisible projectiles. Copper Corpse was surprised to see so many enemies of this strength. "We are in the middle of the deserted steppe," he thought. "Where did these expert fighters come from?" "My shrew," he shouted, "these skilled people, who are they?" "It's the members of the Bat Soaring Through the Heavens group. The leader is the brother of Divine Dragon soaring through the sky." "Good, a group of bastards we have never met." "Never mind, we will kill them anyway." Fearful of his wife's injury, he shouted, "And you, my shrew, are you seriously wounded? Tell me at least that it doesn't threaten your life? Hurry up and slaughter them," Mai Chao Feng shouted furiously. "I am not dead yet." Seeing his wife leaning on the tree and not coming to lend him assistance, Chen understood then that, in spite of her usual stubbornness, she was seriously injured. Worried, he hoped to eliminate the enemy as soon as possible and take care of her. At this moment, 5 freaks were surrounding him. Only Ke Zhen'er remained aside ready to intervene at any time. Chen Xuanfeng threw Go Jing to the ground and sent a punch in the direction of Quan Jinfa. Quan, worried about the child, ducked to avoid the stroke and used this chance to snatch up Go Jing. A somersault got them out of the enemy's range. This movement, named the mischievous cat catches the mouse, is used to avoid and save at the same time. It had been executed with agility and precision. Even Chen Xuanfeng was in awe of his move. Copper Corpse was cruel by nature. The stronger his adversaries were, the more he wanted to make them die with atrocious suffering. Because they had injured his beloved wife, he wanted it even more. The twin killers of the Dark Winds had, for a long time, trained in 2 dangerous techniques: the 9-yin white bone claws and the heartbreaker palm. He had now mastered them to 8 or 9/10 of their power. With a terrifying howl, he attacked his enemies without worrying about his own safety, attacking with deadly strokes every time. The 5 knew that their lives were at stake at this precise moment and didn't take his attacks lightly. They mobilized all their strength to defend themselves. But they could not approach the enemy too closely since he was so dangerous. Han Baoju decided to attack, using the technique whip at the even soil, rolling on the ground and delivering whip strokes from all sides at Chen Xuanfeng's legs. Chen, troubled by this unexpected attack, received a stroke on the back of Nanzai Ren's stick that made him utter a scream of pain. He turned around and stretched his claws towards the wood chopper. Nan didn't have the time to retract his stick for defense, because he sensed the claws coming at him. He fell backward to escape. Then he heard popping sounds coming from the joints of Copper Corpse, whose arm suddenly stretched out extra several inches. His hand was against the wood chopper's forehead. In a fight between experts, the murderous strokes were often avoided by 1 or 2 inches. Nanzai Ren had thought that the extension of his adversary's arm had reached its extreme, yet it had stretched still farther. How would the wood chopper escape this stroke? He soon felt the tips of Shen's nails on his forehead. In panic, he raised his left arm and seized the enemy's wrist with a catch and control technique, trying to block it. At that moment, Zhu Chong jumped on the back of Copper Corpse and jammed his forearm onto the adversary's throat in order to strangle him. By doing that, he fully exposed his own chest, but to save the life of his sworn brother, he didn't worry about breaking the elementary precautionary rules of fighting. At this moment, when the lives of the fighters were held by a thread, thunder sounded and the clouds covered the moon completely. It was total darkness. A person couldn't even see the fingers of his own hands, and a heavy rain started to fall. They heard the sound of 2 crunches and a plunk. Chen Xuanfeng had just broken the left arm of Nanzai Ren and, at the same time, had given a stroke from his elbow to Zhu Chong's chest. Zhu Chong felt a terrible pain that forced him to stop the pressure on his enemy's neck and fall backward. Copper Corpse, close to suffocating, stood to one side catching his breath. "Move back everyone," Han Baoju shouted in the blackness. "Seventh sister, how do you feel?" "Silence," replied Han Xiaoying while moving several steps. Astonished by the sounds of the movements made by his friends, Ke Zhener asked, "Second brother, what's happened?" "The darkness is total," Quan Jinfa answered, "no one can see anything." "So the heavens come to help us," Ke Zhener thought, delighted. The 7 freaks, 3 of whom were severely injured, were thinking that they had just lost the first part. But now dark clouds had covered the sky and it was raining heavily. Each of them kept their breathing silent and no one dared move. The extremely fine hearing of Ke Zhener allowed him to recognize that the breathless man that was standing 7 or 8 steps away from him, on the left, was not one of his brothers. He immediately threw 6 poisoned projectiles in that direction. Chen Xuanfeng sensed the arrival of the invisible projectiles and jumped into the air. He was indeed very strong, and because of it, he succeeded in avoiding all 6 while at the same time, determined their source. Without making a sound, he suddenly leaped, all claws extended, toward Ke Zhener. Ke heard him, briskly moved to the side, and attacked with a stroke from his staff. For him, there was no difference between day and night. Since Chen Xuanfeng couldn't see anything, his power was greatly impaired. The 2 men were now on an equal footing. After about 10 exchanges, Copper Corpse had the impression that his enemy was attacking from all directions, without knowing for sure if his own strokes were directed in the proper direction. It was like living in a nightmare. Slowly probing around, Han Baoju, Han Xiaoying, and Quan Jinfa were trying to help their injured brothers. The fate of Ke Zhener also preoccupied them, but they weren't able to help him in this darkness. Amid the sound of the rain, they heard the hisses produced by the hands of Chen Xuanfeng and the staff of Ke Zhener. The 2 fighters had hardly exchanged 30 strokes, but, to the other freaks, it seemed to last for an eternity. Suddenly, they heard 2 strokes, and Copper Corpse started screaming in pain. He had been struck by the staff. The freaks were delighted just as lightning flashed in the sky, illuminating the summit of the hill. "Watch out, older brother!" Quan Jinfa shouted. Chen Xuanfeng had benefited from this instant of vision to orient himself. He advanced, concentrating his energy in his left shoulder and suffered, without flinching, the staff's strokes. He then seized it with his left hand and his right hand grabbed at the blind man's chest. Ke Zhener, surprised, released his staff and leaped backward. Copper Corpse wasn't going to let such a great opportunity pass. The claw that had already torn his adversary's garment, turned suddenly into a fist. Without a single movement of his body, Shen's arm stretched and delivered a stroke loaded with internal energy, to the blind man's chest, and he was propelled violently backward. At the same time, he threw the blind man's staff like a javelin. All these gestures were executed with smooth continuity. Copper Corpse was very proud of it and issued a long howl of joy, accompanied by thunderous growls. During another lightning flash that illuminated the area briefly, Han Baoju saw the staff flying towards his older brother. Conscious of the danger, he lashed his golden dragon whip, causing it to wrap around the projectile and make it fall. "Now," Chen exclaimed, running towards him, "I'm going to take your dog life." Carried away by his impetus, he stumbled over something that felt like a body. He bent over and grabbed it. It was a small boy, Go Jing. "Let me go!" the child shouted. Then a new lightning flash illuminated the area. Go Jing saw the face of the man that held him in the air, a sallow face with a menacing look. He was so frightened that, instinctively, he drew his dagger and plunged it into the man's body, right in the middle of the navel, until he could push it no further. Chen Xuanfeng let out a terrifying howl and fell backward. In the technique that he used to make his body invincible to the strokes, the vulnerable nodal location HED chosen was situated precisely in his navel. Even though Go Jing's dagger had an extremely sharp blade, even a simple knife, if it struck this place, would have been fatal to him. This was the reason that, during a fight, he took every precaution to protect this part of his body. When he seized the child, he didn't feel that he was a danger to him. After having caught him on the flank of the hill a little while ago, he knew that the youngster surely didn't know any martial arts. However, as the proverb says, it is the good swimmer who drowns, and it is on flat land that the cart reverses itself. Who would have predicted that this dangerous expert was going to lose his life at the hand of a small, weak and ignorant boy? After fatally injuring Copper Corpse, Go Jing remained petrified, standing still without knowing what to do. He seemed on the verge of crying, but didn't dare let himself go. Hearing her husband's long scream, Mai Chaofeng hurried, stumbled, fell and crawled to reach him. "My dear brother," she shouted, "how are you?" "It is done, my little sister," he mumbled. "Hurry, flee before you." "I am going to avenge you," she croaked. Chen Xuanfeng said. "That book has already burned. The secret is in my chest." Cannot get up in one breath, and died. Mai Chaofeng's heart was filled with sorrow and immediately reached out to his chest to touch the secret of the Zhu Yin Jing. Chen Xuanfeng and Mai Chaofeng are brothers and sisters of the same door. Both of them are disciples of the master Huang Yaoshi in the Peach Blossom Island of East China. Huang Yaoshi's martial arts is a self-contained faction. When it comes to the profound skill of the martial arts, the mystery of craftsmanship is not under the name of the Qinseng of the world's martial arts masters and the section of Megatron. Chen Xuanfeng and Mai Chaofeng's academic skills were unsuccessful and secretly concealed. If Master discovered them, they would not only be insured, but they would be ruthless when they died. The two men privately negotiated, and the more they wanted to be afraid, they finally chose to run away. At a high moon black night, they sneaked into the east of the island by boat and then fled to Ningbo, Zhejiang. When Chen Xuanfeng left, he knew that this martial art was more enough self-guard in the martial world, not to be a master. He went the whole hog. He sneaked into the secret room of Master, and stolen half of the Zhu Yin Jing, which his master regarded as a treasure. Huang Yaoshi was of course extremely angry, but because he has vowed not to leave Peach Blossom Island for a while, his wish was not paid. Couldn't swear by the oath and go out for search, but he flew into a rage. He transferred his anger to the other disciples, broken their tendons, expelled them out of the Peach Blossom Island, and kept himself in the room. So this couple implicated others in an undeserved catastrophe, but according to the secret biography of the Zhu Yin Jing, they finally became rare martial masters in the martial world. This Zhu Yin Jing was a superb Taoist kung fu. But the couple only stole the lower half. They couldn't learn the internal kung fu of the upper half, and the martial arts of Huang Yaoshi were another branch. It is different from the Taoist martial arts. The couple was both cruel. They only knew a little of the book, but by their guess, they just practiced the insidious kung fu. On that day, the couple studied the Zhu Yin white bone claws in the barren hills, and stacked the dead people in 9 piles, which happened to hit the K brothers. The K brother saw that his husband and wife had killed innocent, so they intervened. The older brother died in the fight. Fortunately, the couple's Zhu Yin white bone claws had not yet been fully practiced. K Zhener finally escaped his life, but a pair of eyes were also blind. After the couple succeeding their kung fu, they fought in the martial world. The couple did not encounter an opponent. The ordinary martial artists were always failing. They defeated even the famous countless heroes. So the couple got a nickname of Black Winds. Seeing their master did not show up, it was even more rampant, until dozens of good players besieged them, and both husband and wife were seriously injured. They disappeared and lived in seclusion. For many years, the martial world no longer heard their news, only said that 2 people died, but who knew that they hid in Mobe and secretly practiced sinister martial arts. The Zhu Yin white bone claw and destroy the heart were all contained in the Zhu Yin Jing. Chen Xuanfeng and Mai Chaofeng were married to each other, but he would never to show her the original book. After he learned and practiced, he then passed on his wife. No matter how hard his wife asked, he always refused. He said this scripture has two parts. I only stole the lower half. Everything that is rooted and repaired is actually in the upper half. If I show you the scripture, you are greedy to learn all the printed martial arts. You will be possessed by the devil, at least you will injure yourself, at most you will kill yourself. Although there are many martial arts in it, only cooperate with the basic skills we have learned, you can practice them. Mai Chaofeng listened to his reason and knew that her husband was sincere to herself. Although she has been called shrew, he was a deep affection, so she would not pursue it. Mai Chaofeng saw her husband dying at this time, and hence asked, but he couldn't breathe in one breath, only said a half sentence, and he was dead. She groped in her husband's chest, but there was nothing. Under one sigh, she wanted to touch it again. Han Baoju, Han Zhaoying, and Quan Jinfa, taking advantage of the first glow of the pre-dawn, rushed to the attack. Mai Chaofeng had not only lost her vision, but she felt her head spinning from the poison's effects. While training in the 9-yin white bone claws, the spouses had, for about 10 years, absorbed arsenic acid in small quantities regularly. They neutralized the toxic effects with their internal energy. Using this dangerous method was the only way that Chen Xuanfeng had found to increase their internal and external strength. With time, Mai had been partially immunized against poison. Otherwise, the poisoned projectiles of Zhener would have killed her long ago. She defended herself so ferociously that the freaks didn't even manage to reach her and were repeatedly put in danger. Han Baoju was beginning to get angry. He thought to himself, if we can't manage to overcome her on a 3-against-1 basis, and even worse, she's injured and blind, what a blow to the reputation of the 7 freaks of Jiangnan. He then attacked more furiously with his whip, focusing on trying to hit her back. Han Zhaoying and Quan Jinfa, noticing their enemy staggering, also increased the vigor of their attacks. Just as it seemed they would carry the day against her, a storm arose and dark clouds covered the sky again. Suddenly, the mixed violent gusts of wind and rain blinded them again. The 3 freaks dropped to the ground to protect themselves. Much later, the storm abated and the moon again showed from behind the clouds. Han Baoju jumped to his feet and uttered a scream of frustration. Mai Chaofeng and the body of Chen Xuanfeng had disappeared. What greeted him was the sight of his severely injured friends lying on the ground. The small head of Go Jing slowly appeared from behind some rocks. Everyone was soaked to the bone. The 3 uninjured survivors rose to take care of the injured. Nan Ziren had a broken arm, but fortunately no internal injuries. Zhener and Zhu Chong, whose Niagong was powerful, were not too affected either, even though they had been hit by several strokes from Copper Corpse. However, Zhang Asheng had been hit 2 times by the 9-yin white bone claws and also received a deadly stroke to the head. He was conscious but his life was on the line. Seeing him close to death, the 6 collapsed in sadness, especially Han Zhaoying, who knew very well that the 5th brother had been in love with her for a long time. But she was a bit of a tomboy, enjoying martial arts above all else, and had little to do with matters of the heart. Zhang Asheng, for his part, laughed it off the whole time. They had never admitted to any feelings. Thinking of how he had thrown himself under the enemy's claws to protect her, she hugged Zhang sobbing. Zhang Asheng's plump face was normally cheerful and smiling. Even now he smiled slightly and his big hand softly caressed Zhao Ying's hair. "Don't cry," he said to her, trying to comfort her. "Don't cry. I am all right." "5th brother," she said while hiccuping back her sobs, "do you want to marry me?" Zhang gave a silly laugh, causing the pain from his injuries to make him suffer badly, and he began to lose consciousness. "5th brother," she continued, "I assure you that I already consider myself your wife. I won't ever marry anyone else. After my death, we will remain together for eternity." "7th sister," mumbled Zhang, I have not taken good care of you. I am not worthy of you. You always took very good care of me, she sobbed. I always knew it. With his eyes full of tears, Zhu Chong asked Gojing, when you came here, was it to learn martial arts from us? Yes, the child answered. Then you must obey us from now on. Gojing nodded his head. We, the 7 brothers and sister, will all be your masters, continued Zhu Chong while wiping away his tears. But now, your 5th master's spirit is going to leave us, kowtow and pay him homage. Gojing didn't know what spirit is going to leave us meant, but he immediately obeyed, kowtowing and touching the ground with his forehead. Zhang Asheng, his face white like linen, forced himself to smile. That is sufficient, brave boy. I won't be able to teach you my knowledge all, but if I did, and even if you had learned what I know, it would not serve you very well. I am not naturally quick-witted, and rather lazy about practicing. I relied on the little strength that I had I worked more, maybe I would not have met a sad end today. He almost fainted and became even paler. Neither are you, he said while panting, naturally gifted. It's absolutely necessary for you to put in a lot of effort. When you're tempted to be lazy, think about your 5th master and the state in which you see him. He wanted to continue, but didn't have any more strength. Han Xiaoying lowered her ear to Zhang's mouth, and heard him barely say, teach the child well, don't let us lose to that cow-nosed Taoist priest. Be assured, said Han Xiaoying, the 7 freaks of Jiangnan will not lose. Zhang Asheng gave a small foolish laugh, closed his eyes, departed this world, and returned his soul. The 6 freaks broke into sobs. Since they had become sworn brothers, a very strong bond united them. During the past years searching for Li Ping and her son, they had lived day and night together. And now, at this moment, one of them had tragically died in this foreign land. How could they not be overwhelmed with grief? After having cried themselves out, they dug a grave and buried Zhang Asheng. When they finished, they erected a big rock to mark the place of his grave. By then the sun had already risen. Quan Jinfa and Han Baoju left to search for visible clues that could lead them to Mai Chaofeng. After the storm, the sun showed no traces of her passing and it was impossible to know where she had gone. They extended their search for several li around the mountain but came up with nothing. In the steppe, Zhu Chong said, I imagine that this woman can't go very far. The poisoned projectiles should have taken effect by now and she will probably die somewhere. Let's take the child back home first and take care of our injured. After that, 3rd and 6th brother, and 7th sister can continue the search. All agreed and shed some more tears while saying farewell at the grave of their deceased brother.